Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I like to discuss criticism of the UK government for rushing into Brexit trade talks without first having decided what regulations it wants to adopt, including, of course, on the contentious food standards issue. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the Brexit situation in 2020, I suppose, can essentially be characterised as Boris Johnson saying that the UK will not align itself with the EU on anything. That means any and all regulations are now in a state of flux. I mean, put it this way, we refused to coordinate with other European departments of health because of Brexit. Well, we've left the EU. We refused to join the procurement scheme because of Brexit. We refused to stay in any of the schemes with the EU after the transition period's end because of Brexit. Not for any practical reasons, not because it saves us money. It doesn't. It costs us far more money. The reasoning is always because Brexit, because Brexit. Why didn't we get in on this PPE order? Because Brexit. Why are we not joining in on the vaccine programme? Because Brexit. Everything because Brexit. So Brexit to Boris Johnson means completely decoupling from the EU on everything. Even if we have shared values on something, no, we can't have the same approach. That'd be nonsense. Now, we know that the US, under Donald Trump, of course, and backed by the powerful agricultural lobby in America, wants and expects the UK to lower its food standards in order to pursue the trade deal that is in their best interest. Now, in response, the UK government has talked about maintaining food production standards, but allowing imports of lower standard food. So when Boris Johnson and ministers talk about the fact we are going to preserve food standards, they don't mean that. They mean food production standards. But, you know, they keep trying to argue, but it shouldn't be up to us to tell other countries what their standards should be. No, that's correct, but it should be up to us to decide what standards are allowed into the country. Now, obviously, with the American or the proposal, I should say, which is that we maintain food production standards, but allowing lower standard imports, that means we undercut our own food producers whilst doing nothing to protect the public. So from our point of view, lose-lose. From America's point of view, win-win, because not only do they get to sell stuff in the UK market that they, at the moment, cannot, but also they'd get to do so more competitively because British producers would not be allowed to compete. But part of the problem, recently highlighted by the Institute for Government, is that the UK didn't bother to decide on its future regulatory framework before engaging in these Brexit talks. Obviously, trade talks are all about, for each side, increasing market access for your businesses. To this end, everyone we conduct talks with will want to ensure that goods that their country produces will be more competitive in the UK market, than without the deal. That's the whole point of the deal, to get better access to someone else's market. But because except of course for the Brexit withdrawal agreement, which is the first deal in history that actually negotiated for us to have less access to someone's market. Let us not forget that one. But anyway, talking about how trade agreements usually work. So because the UK government have given no indication at all about how they intend to diverge standards from the EU, only that they do intend to, other countries, including, of course, the United States, are focusing their efforts on getting us to change our rules to suit them because they're going, well, you're changing your rules anyway. You might as well change them to suit us. And it's an obvious enough approach, of course. And the author of this report from the Institute for Government, James Kane, who's a former civil servant who worked in international trade, has said that the UK's domestic regulatory system is internationally recognised as excellent, but that the government risks compromising it by rushing into trade negotiations unprepared. And it has certainly been a feature of Brexit that nothing has been planned in advance. You know, we triggered Article 50 without the government ever publishing their proposal for our post-Brexit future. There was no proposal. even though now this wasn't the government, fair enough, but Brexit supporters, all the Brexit campaigners, all said we shouldn't trigger Article 50 until we've decided our position. Then Boris Johnson took over the leadership and there was still no proposal. We entered into talks with the EU, in other words, we left the EU as a member into the transition period, began talks, there was still no proposal. Same with the US and Japan as well. They all had them. They all know what they want. Boris Johnson keeps talking about diverging our regulatory systems from the EU, but without ever saying how exactly. So you want to diverge this? Yeah, we do. Okay, to what? Where are we headed to? There's no answer to that. It's like he knows he wants our regulations to be different to the EU, but he doesn't know what they want to look like. It's like, I don't really know what we want. We just want it to be different to the EU. Again, that's the Brexit mindset. And that makes us vulnerable in trade talks because everything is on the table. You know, when we take part in these talks, it isn't just about market access. We're actually negotiating with other countries about what our laws should be. Apparently that's taking back control. And none of this has been helped by refusing to cooperate with devolved administrations in the UK, of course, and also by getting their own MPs to vote through measures that means Parliament also gets no scrutiny over future trade agreements either. And the report made a point that I hadn't considered, actually. So what it said is, if you give Parliament greater scrutiny over trade deals and regulatory changes, then negotiators can point to difficult stakeholders back home. So I suppose this is the sort of thing experience in international trade negotiations would give you. So in other words, what we're saying is, so we're in talks with a different nation, and that nation wants us to adopt certain changes that benefit them, but not us. So in that scenario, what he's saying is negotiators will be able to go, yeah, okay, because they want to maintain a good relationship. I can see how that can be useful, but the SNP would never wear it, I'm afraid. We'll never get it through. Sorry. And that strengthens our position. The other side don't push so hard for aspects of the deal that will be damaging for us because they know there's no point. There will be no payoff at the end because you just say, well, you know, this political bloc back home will never wear it. And they'll focus on mutually productive lines of negotiation. But the issue is that Boris Johnson has removed the power and scrutiny of our democratic institutions to involve themselves. So our negotiating partners, or opponents, as you could potentially even characterise them, know that they only have to convince Boris Johnson. There are no compromises needed on the British side because he can agree whatever he wants and, well, you just agree to this and we have our deal. So they push him on issues that we really shouldn't even be talking about. And in the Financial Times article on this, it also noted that the government said that it was committed to a transparent approach to trade negotiations. No, it's not. Because if that were true, then why are these talks taking place behind closed doors and why are we not getting communications on what has been discussed? You know, we are for the EU because we have to, because the EU do that anyway. Why aren't we getting minutes or even main points of the US talks being published? Why do we only have access to some of those accounts from last year? Because a government minister stupidly emailed a copy of them to his personal email account and then got hacked. The government also say that this includes updates to Parliament. They want to update Parliament. Are they? Where are these updates then? Because these talks have been taking place in the US for some time. We don't seem to have had an update on that at all. And also, finally, the government said that MPs could block any deal that they did not like. It's not entirely true, is it? Because MPs are not even allowed to see the deal. They're not allowed to see the talks emerging. They're not allowed to see the text of any deal or proposals, much less scrutinise them. In addition, as the Institute for Government report notes, the text of agreements rarely deals with regulations. Like if someone's going to say, oh, all right, Phil, when a text comes out, where does it say in here we've got to change this regulation? It doesn't. They're separate. The government pushed those through as separate bills. The government are already doing it as a result of talks with the US. They've already been putting through legislation to change our regulatory systems. It's already been happening. And it'll be in a seemingly unconnected way. You have these talks to say, okay, but to get this deal, you're going to have to change this. law. So you do that separately. You just introduce a bill, put it through Parliament. The report also says that the World Trade Organization bans quite a lot of the regulatory freedom sought by Brexiteers. Brexiteers say we should be free to make our own rules. We've argued for the longest time. There's no such thing. Unless you want to isolate yourself completely, there is no such thing. You will be bound by international norms. You know, it suggested that for all Boris Johnson's boasts about, for example, not lowering certain food standards. So one of them is hormone-injected beef. But World Trade Organization rules say that you can't do that. You can't actually ban hormone-injected beef. So because, I mean, the EU have sometimes, you know, a particular economy is strong enough to resist certain rules. We get to be a bit of a bully. But we're in a weak position. So we're going to be forced to actually stick to these rules outside of the EU. You know, Brexiteers think that the World Trade Organization is a light touch. Well, it's like anything else. It contains a framework of rules that we will have to obey. And if we do not obey them, then the US and China are going to make sure we do. If they are harmed by our rule breaking, that is. And again, it was noted, you know, so, well, I'll put a link to the report below, of course, you can read it yourself. It's not a huge document, a few dozen pages. It is quite an interesting read. But I think the main point of interest to me, as someone who is interested in the process of Brexit, but obviously I don't have any experience of developing regulations or of international negotiations, trade talks, anything like that, is the fact that we are just so far behind when it comes to the regulatory side of negotiations. And it is, you know, obvious really when you think about it, because we're supposedly conducting trade talks with the most advanced economies on earth. We're talking with the EU, with the United States, with Japan. We want to talk to Canada. Canada at the moment have told us to sod off until we've finished with the EU. We haven't even decided our own position. We're going into these talks without actually knowing who we are. Who are we? What are our rules set? And yet we're still engaging in those talks whilst arguing amongst ourselves about what post-Brexit Britain should actually look like. That debate is still going on. Even in government, even amongst the people who can actually determine it. I'm not talking about in the country where we've got no power left at all. And it is an utter madness that should have been sorted out before we ever triggered Article 50, as was promised by those Brexit campaigners before the referendum. That we would actually not only initiate our exit, but even complete it before we'd even decided what our own position was complete lunacy. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.